The book of Genesis, chapter 35. Yo, Jacob, listen up, God said, to get up. Well, let's read that again. Yo, Jacob, listen up. God said to get up and head over to Bethel. Settle down there and build an altar to honor God, the one who showed up when you were running away from your bro Esau. Then Jacob was like, yo, listen up, everyone and his crew. We got to ditch those sketchy gods you got hidden in your stuff. Time to purify ourselves and put on some fresh threads. So let's get up and head to Bethel. There I'm going to build an altar for God, who totally had my back when things got rough and stuck with me every step of the way. So they handed over to Jacob all the gods they had, those foreign ones, and also their cool earrings that they had in their ears. And Jacob, being all smart about it, he hid them under his oak tree that was by Shechem. So they kept moving, and the awe-inspiring power of God fell upon the neighboring cities, causing them not to chase after Jacob's sons. So Jacob went to Luz, which is in Canaan, also known as Bethel, with all his crew that were with him. And he made like this sick altar there and named the place El Bethel, because that's where God showed up to him when he was running away from his bro. El Bethel like means the God of Bethel or something. Deborah, the nurse of Rebekah, sadly passed away, and her final resting place was beneath a beautiful oak tree near Bethel. This sacred oak tree was given the name Alan Bakuth, meaning the oak of weeping, as a tribute to her memory. So like God showed up to Jacob once again, right after he left Padanaram, and totally blessed him. So God was like, hey, dude, from now on, you're going to be called Israel, not Jacob. That's going to be your new name. And he actually changed his name to Israel. And God was like, yo, dude, I'm God Almighty. No one can top me. So here's the deal. Have lots of kids, build a whole nation, even multiple nations, and some legit kings are going to come from your bloodline, bro. And yo, that land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I'm going to give it to you and to your homies after you. It's going to be their turf too. And God bounced from him at the spot where they had a chat. So Jacob placed a cool looking stone thingy there. He had deep, let's read that again. So Jacob placed a cool looking stone thingy where he had a deep convo with God. And he poured some fruity drink and trendy oil on it, to show his respect and gratitude. So Jacob named the place where God spoke to him Bethel. So they left Bethel, and it wasn't too far until they reached Ephrath. And let me tell you, Rachel was going through it. She was in intense pain and laboring hard. It wasn't an easy situation, that's for sure. So while she was going through a really tough time giving birth, the midwife reassured her, like, don't stress, don't worry. You're going to have another son. As she took her last breath and passed away, she decided to name her baby boy Benoni, which means the son of my sorrow. However, his father renamed him Benjamin, which means the son of the right hand. And like Rachel passed away, and they laid her to rest on the road to Ephrath, which is like Bethlehem. So Jacob placed a monument on Rachel's grave. Let's hurry up and get past this. It's still there to this day, known as Rachel's monument. Of course, everybody knows why that's a difficult part for me. Let's keep reading. 21. So Israel moved on and set up his tent past the Tower of Edar. So like while Israel was living in that place, Reuben, one of Jacob's sons, hooked up with Bilhah, who was like his dad's concubine. And man, Jacob found out about it. Just so you know, Jacob had 12 sons in total. Here are Leah's kids. Reuben, the oldest, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel had 2 sons named Joseph and Benjamin. And Rachel had these 2 kids through her handmaid, Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali, And the sons of Zilpah, who was Leah's BFF, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him during his time in Padanaram. So Jacob went to his dad Isaac in Hebron, which is also called Mamre, the same place where Abraham and Isaac had stayed for a while. Isaac lived for like a super long time, He reached the epic age of 180 years. Can you believe it? And Isaac passed away peacefully, and he died, joining his ancestors as an elder who lived a long and fulfilling life. His sons Esau and Jacob laid him to rest with reverence. Genesis chapter 36. So here's the deal. Let's talk about Esau, who's also known as Edom. Here's his backstory, fam. Esau married women from the Canaanite families. He married Adah, who was the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Holabamah, who was a daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Bashemath, who was Ishmael's daughter, and Ebojeth's sister, Basemath or Mahalath. And Ada had a son named Eliphaz with Esau, while Basemath had a son named Ruel. And so Abalamah had Jeush, Jalum, and Korah. These are the kids of Esau that were born to him while he was living in Canaan. So Esau gathered up his wives, kids, and everyone in his household, along with his livestock, pets, and all his possessions that he'd acquired in Canaan. He decided to move away to a different place to avoid his brother Jacob's presence. No, persons in Hebrew means souls. Their wealth was too great for them to live in harmony, and the land where they had settled couldn't sustain them and their livestock. So Esau made his home in Mount Seir, and he became known as Edom. So here's the rundown of Esau. He's the big guy who fathered the Edomites, those peeps living in Mount Seir. Oh, FYI. Edomites means Edom in Hebrew. Here's a list of Esau's sons. Eliphaz, who was born to Ada, Esau's wife, and Ruel, who was born to Bashemath, Esau's other wife. Eliphaz had sons named Teman, Omar, Zepho, also known as Zephi, Gedem, and Kenaz. Timnah was kind of like a side piece to Eliphaz, who was Esau's son. And she ended up having a kid with Eliphaz named Amalek. So basically, Amalek was one of the sons of Ada, who was actually Esau's wife. So Ruel had a crew of sons, Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. They were all from Bashemath, Esau's wifey. These are the kids of Holabamah, who was Anah's daughter. And Zibeon's granddaughter, Holabamah, was Esau's wife, and she gave birth to Jeush, Jalum, and Korah. These were the OG leaders of Esau's crew. Eliphaz, Esau's oldest bro, was the top dog. He had his homies Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Kenaz as his right-hand men. Duke Korah, Duke Gedem, and Duke Amalek. These were the leaders who came from Eliphaz and the land of Edom. They were the sons of Ada. These are the guys Ruel, who is Esau's son had. Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah were like the bosses. They were the important dudes in Ruel's crew in the land of Edom. Bashemath, who was Esau's wife, had these sons. And these are the guys that Holabamah, Esau's wife, had, Jeush, Jalum, and Korah. They were the leaders who descended from Holabamah, the daughter of Anah and Esau's wife. So these are the descendants of Esau, commonly known as Edom, and these are their leaders. These dudes were the sons of Seir the Horite, who were living in that land, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anah. And there were Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan. They were the big shots of the Horites, the children of Seir from the land of Edom. The kids of Lotan were Hori and Hemam. And Lotan had a sister named Timnah. Hemam could also be called Homam. And Shobal had these cool kids, Alvin, Manathoth, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. Alvin could also be called Elion. Shepho's alternative name is Shephi. These were the offspring of Zibeon, Ajah, and Anah. Anah was the one who came across some cool mules while taking care of his dad, Zibeon's donkeys in the wilderness. The homies from Anah had these kids, Dishan and Holabamah, who was Anah's daughter. I'm getting tired of keep talking about the Holabamah. Good night. How many times you going to mention that name? All right, 26. Here are the names of Dishan's children, Himdam, Ishbam, Ithram, and Chiram. Himdan could also be called Amram. Here are the kids of Ezer, Bilhan, Zaphan, and Achan, also known as Jachan. These are the descendants of Dishan, Uz, and Aaron. These were the major influencers of the Horite community. They were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anah. Duke Dishan, Duke Ezer, and Duke Dishan were the big shots from the crew called Hori, among the other influential peeps in the land of Seir. So there were these kings who ruled over the land of Edom, way before any king ruled over the children of Israel. You feel me? So like this dude named Bela, Behor's son, was like the boss in Edom, and his city was called Dinhabah and stuff. Bela passed away, and then Jobab, Zerah's son from Bozrah, took over as ruler. And Jobab passed away, and Husham from the land of Timnah took over as ruler in his place. So Husham passed away, and then Hadad, the son of Bedad, became the ruler. Hadad led the victorious attack against the Midianites in the Moab region. His city was called Havith. And Hadad passed away, and Shamlah and Masrekah took over as ruler. Then Shamlah passed away, and Saul from Rehoboth took over as ruler near the river. And like Saul passed away, and then Baal Hanan, Akbar's son, took over as king, totally stepping into his shoes. So yeah, Baal-Hanan, Akbar's son, passed away, and Hadar took over as ruler. Hadar's city was called Pa'u, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, who was the daughter of Matred and the granddaughter of Mezabab. Just a heads up, after Hadar, things went down a whole different political path. And these are the cool kids who were part of Esau's crew, representing their families, their territories, and their names. We got Timnah, the ultimate duke, Alva, the boss duke, and Japheth, the duke with serious style. Alva is also known as Eliah, just so you know. Dope, Aholibamah, Elah, the homie, Penan, the legend, Duke Kenaz, Duke Timam, Duke Mibzar. Duke Magdiel and Duke Amram were the top guys of Edom, living in their own spots within the land they owned. Esau, the dad of the Edomites, was in charge. The Edomites were from Edom, just so you know. Genesis chapter 37. So Jacob lived in the land where his dad was just visiting in Canaan. So here's the deal. This is the story of Jacob's family. Joseph, who was just a kid of 17, was hanging out with his bros and taking care of the flock. He was chilling with the sons of his dad's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. And one day Joseph goes and tells his pops about the shady stuff they were up to. Israel was totally vibing with Joseph and showed him mad love, since he was his favorite child and was born when Israel was getting up there in age. He even hooked up Joseph with this sick coat decked out in all sorts of rad colors. And when his siblings noticed that their dad liked him way more than they straight up hated him and couldn't even have a chill convo with him. So Joseph had this dream and he decided to share it with his bros. But instead of being stoked about it, they got even more salty and started hating on him even harder. Yo, listen up, fam. Check out this dream I had, all right? So listen up. I was out in the field bundling up the wheat, and get this. My bundle of wheat stood up tall and proud. And guess what? Your bundles of wheat gathered around and bowed down to mine. And his siblings were like, seriously, are you going to be our ruler? Like, are you going to boss us around? And they hated me even more because he would always talk about his dreams and what they meant. So like Joseph had another dream and he was like, hey fam, listen up. I had this crazy dream where the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. So he goes and tells his dad and siblings about it. And his dad isn't too thrilled. He's like, what's up with the dream you had? You really think me, your mom, and your siblings are going to bow down to you? Like, seriously? And his siblings were totally jealous of him. But his dad totally took note of what was going on. So his squad went to take care of their dad's animals in Shechem. Israel's like, yo, Joseph, aren't your brothers supposed to be chilling with the flock in Shechem? Go find them. I'll send you over. Joseph was all like, for sure, here I am. Yo, listen up, he told him. Can you do me a solid and check in on your brothers and see how they're doing along with the flock? Let me know how everything's going. So he sent him away from Hebron and has made his way to Shechem. You feel me? So this guy came across him, and it turns out he was just wandering around in the field. The guy approached him and was like, hey, what are you looking for? He's like, yo, where are my bros at? Can you please let me know where they hang out and chill with their flocks? The guy was like, yo, those dudes bounce. I overheard them saying something about, let's hit up Dothan. So Joseph was like, bet, and went to find his brothers and ended up locating them in Dothan. So like when they spotted him from a distance, way before he even got close to them, they got all scheming and planned to straight up kill the dude. And they were like, listen, here comes the guy who thinks he's the ultimate expert in dreams. Dreamer in Hebrew means master of dreams. Yo, let's do something about this, like totally take him out and throw him into a pit. Then we'll be like, oh no, some savage creature just chowed down on him. It'll be so interesting to see what happens to his dreams after that. Reuben heard what was up, so he saved him from their clutches and was like, nah, let's not take this to the extreme and end his life. And Reuben was like, yo, don't straight up kill him or anything. Just chuck him into this random pit in the middle of nowhere. And don't you dare touch him. The plan is to save him from their hands and eventually reunite him with his dad. So like Joseph went to hang with his bros and they straight up took off his cool rainbow coat he was wearing. You know, the one with all the colors. It was a pretty swag outfit, no cap. So they grabbed him and tossed him into a pit. And guess what? The pit was totally dry. Not a drop of water in sight. So they were just chilling, about to feast on some bread when they suddenly spotted a gang of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. These peeps were rolling with their camels, loaded up with spices, balm and myrrh, all set to take it down to Egypt. Judah was like, yo, bros, What's the point if we kill our own brother and then hide the evidence? Hey, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites instead of hurting him ourselves, because he's our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed with the plan. So like these Midianite merchant guys were passing by, right? And they saw Joseph stuck in this pit, and we're all like, nah, we'll help this dude out. But instead of setting him free, they sold him to the Ishmaelites for like 20 pieces of silver. And off they went, taking Joseph all the way to Egypt. So Reuben went back to the pit where they had left Joseph, but guess what? Joseph wasn't there anymore. Reuben became totally distraught and tore his clothes in despair. So he went back to his buddies and was like, guys, the kid's gone. And now where do I even go? So like they grabbed Joseph's sick coat and they straight up took a baby goat, killed it, and dunked the coat in its blood, man. So they sent that sick jacket their brother wore and delivered it to their dad saying, yo, check it out. We found this. Can you confirm if it's your son's swag or what? He found out what happened and said, this is my son's jacket. A wild animal definitely attacked him, and Joseph is undoubtedly torn apart. So Jacob tore his clothes and put on some sackcloth and was totally mourning for his son for a long time. And all his homies and all his besties came to support him, but he didn't want to feel better. He was like, no, I'm going to stay sad till I join my son in the afterlife. So his dad cried a lot for him. So like the Midianites totally sold him off to Egypt to this dude named Potiphar, who was like a super important officer in Pharaoh's squad. And he was the head honcho of the whole guard crew. By the way, this word officer can mean eunuch, but it also includes chamberlains, courtiers, and other high-ranking peeps. And captain of the guard can also be translated as chief marshal, chief of the slaughtermen or executioners. Pretty insane, right? Genesis chapter 38. So there was this moment when Judah decided to separate himself from his brothers and headed over to this Adullamite dude named Hira. And Judah noticed this Canaanite girl named Shua and decided to get close to her and be intimate with her. And she got pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named him And then she got pregnant again and gave birth to a son, and she named him Onan. And then she got pregnant again and gave birth to a son. She named him Shelah. He was born in Shezeb. And Judah found a partner for his oldest son, and her name was Tamar. Was the oldest son of Judah. He did things that were seen as wrong by the Lord, so the Lord caused him to die. And Judah told Onan, yo, bro, go sleep with your brother's wife and be her husband so that you can have kids in his name. And Onan realized that the offspring wouldn't be considered his own. So when he slept with his brother's wife, he intentionally wasted it on the ground to prevent her from getting pregnant and continuing his brother's family line. And what he did was not cool with the Lord, so he ended up taking him out too. Not cool in the Hebrew text. It says it was bad in the eyes of the Lord. So Judah told his daughter-in-law Tamar, stay at your father's place as a widow until my son Shelah grows up, because I'm afraid he might end up like his brothers who died. So Tamar went and lived at her father's house. After some time, Shua's daughter, who was married to Judah, sadly passed away. Judah mourned her loss, but eventually found solace and decided to go up to Timnah with his buddy. Here were the Adullamite to watch over his sheep and get some work done. By the way, in the process of time just means a while had passed. Tamar heard the news that her father-in-law was heading to Timnah to shear his sheep, and she changed out of her widow clothes and put on a veil, wrapping herself up. Then she sat in a public place along the road to Timnah. She did this because she noted that Shelah had grown up, but she wasn't being given to him as his wife. This public place was also known as the Door of Eyes, or Enegim. When Judah saw her, he assumed she was a sex worker because she had her face covered. And he saw her on the way and said, like, hey, can I come over to your place? He didn't know she was his daughter-in-law. And she's like, what's in it for me if you come? And he was like, yo, I'll hook you up with a cute little baby goat from my flock. She was like, hold up. Can you give me something as a guarantee until you actually send it? Like a deposit or something. By the way, when it says kid, it means a baby goat, just a little FYI. And he was like, what can I give you as a sign of trust? And she was all, give me your cool ring, your stylish bracelets, and that rad staff you're holding. So yeah, he handed them over, hooked up with her, and boom, she got pregnant. And she got up, took off her head covering, and put on the clothes for mourning. So Judah sent his buddy from Adullam to pick up the stuff he left with that woman, but he couldn't find her. So he asked the guys there, like, where's that girl who was like standing out in the open on the side of the road? And they were all like, oh, there wasn't any girl in that place at all. So he went back to Judah and was like, yo, I couldn't find her. And the dudes from that spot were like, no, bro, there ain't no sex workers here. Judah was like, yeah, I just let her have it so we don't look bad. I mean, I did try to give her this animal, but you couldn't find her. We don't want to be humiliated, right? So like after about 3 months, someone came and told Judah, yo, your daughter-in-law has been like doing some shady stuff, you know. She's pregnant and it's not like a good situation. And Judah was all, bring her out, man. We got to like punish her, maybe burn her. So like when she had his baby and all, she messaged her father-in-law, was all, guess what? Guess who made me preggo? And she was like, can you like figure out whose stuff these are? The fancy ring, the bracelets, and the cool staff. And Judah was like, yo, I got to admit, she's way more righteous than me. Because like I didn't give her to my son, Sheila. And by the way, he never hooked up with her again. So like when it was time for her to give birth and all, surprise, there were like twins in her belly. So when she was in labor, the baby. So when she was in labor, the baby reached out its hand and the midwife quickly tied a red thread around its hand saying, this baby is the first one to come out. And then like as he pulled back his hand, his brother like totally came out. And she was like, whoa, dude, how'd you break out like that? So they named him Phares, which means a breach, because, you know, he caused quite the commotion by breaking out like that. And then his brother came out and he had a dope scarlet thread on his hand. They called him Zara. Genesis 39. So like Joseph was taken to Egypt, you know, and get this, Potiphar, this big shot working for Pharaoh, who's like the boss dude and in charge of the guards. He's an Egyptian, by the way, bought him from those Ishmaelites who brought Joseph down there. Crazy, right? God was vibing with Joseph and he was straight up successful. He was living it up in his master's crib, which happened to be in Egypt. And his boss knows that God was on his side and that God made everything he did successful. And Joseph was totally blessed in his boss's eyes. So he worked for him and his boss promoted him as the head honcho of his crib. He trusted Joseph with everything he owned. So like when Joseph was put in charge of everything in Potiphar's house, the whole place started thriving. Thanks to God's blessing, seriously, everything Joseph was responsible for, both in and out the fields, was just overflowing with God's favor. So like this guy totally trusted Joseph with everything he had. And he didn't even have to worry about anything except for the food he ate. Joseph was, you know, really good looking and attractive. After all this happened, his boss's wife started checking out Joseph and straight up said, want to hook up? But he was like, no way. And he said to his master's wife, look, my master has no idea what's going on with me in the house. And he's entrusted me with everything he's got. Yo, I'm the top dog in this crib and my boss has trusted me with everything except you because you're his wifey. So why would I even consider doing this messed up stuff and they're going against God? One day she kept on talking to Joseph, but he didn't give in to her or hang out with her. So like at around that time, Joseph went into the house to handle his stuff. And like none of the guys who lived there were around. Then she grabbed his clothes and said, hook up with me. But he made a quick exit, leaving his clothes behind. She grabbed all his clothes off. Jesus. So like she noticed that he like left his clothes with her and, you know, totally ran away. So she gathered a squad and had a real talk with them. Like, yo, check it out. This guy brought in a Hebrew dude to clown us. He tried to get up all in my business. But I straight up screamed at the top of my lungs. You feel me? Loud, meaning great. And then when he heard me raising my voice and crying out, he quickly ditched his clothes with me and made a swift exit. And she kept his outfit with her until her boss came home. So she told him, hey, listen up. The Hebrew servant you brought here, well, he came into my place and started making fun of me. So like I was just expressing myself and calling out. And like he totally bailed and left his clothes behind. So when his boss heard what his wife said, telling him that his servant did this to her, he got really mad. So Joseph's boss took him and threw him into prison, the spot where all the king's prisoners were held. And yep, he stayed in there in the prison. Yo, God had Joseph's back and like totally showed him love and kindness. And the prison guard was totally into him. It was lit, man. The prison warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. And he was responsible for everything that happened there. The prison guard didn't stress about anything within his control because God was on his side. And everything he did worked out well, thanks to God. Genesis chapter 40. So like after all that stuff happened, the butler and the baker, the king of Egypt, did something to make their boss, the king of Egypt, really mad. And Pharaoh was super mad at two of his officers, the head bartender and the head baker. So like he totally locked them up in the house of the top dog, the captain of the guard. They were thrown into the slammer, the same spot Joseph was stuck. So like the head honcho in charge put Joseph in charge of them and he helped them out. They all hung out together for a while in like lockdown. So like they both had this dream one night, and they each had their own dream and stuff. The butler and the baker, they were chilling in the Egyptian king's prison and all. So Joseph walked up to them in the morning and saw that they were feeling down. And he asked Pharaoh's squad that were chilling with him in the crib of the boss's house, like, yo, what y'all looking all bummed out today? Why y'all looking all bummed out today? Why are your faces looking mad negative? So they were like, yo, we had this wild dream, but there's nobody who can explain it to us. And Joseph was like, bro, don't interpretations come from God? Tell me what went down if you could, please. So like the head butler spills his dreams to Joseph and he's all like, dude, I had this dream where there was a huge vine right in front of me. So like there were these 3 branches in the vine and they were all budding and blooming and stuff. And then these bunches of grapes popped up and they were totally ripe and ready to like eat and enjoy. So like I had Pharaoh's cup in my hand, right? And I grabbed these grapes, squeezed them into the cup, and I handed the cup to Pharaoh just like that. Joseph was like, listen up, fam. Here's what the dream means. Those 3 branches represent 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh's going to recognize your skills and put you back in your position. You'll even be trusted with handing Pharaoh his cup, just like you used to do when you were his butler, reckon or consider. But like when things are going great for you, do me a solid and remember me. Show me your kindness and, put in a good word for me with Pharaoh. I'm just trying to get out of this place. You feel me? So like I was totally taken from the Hebrew land. And honestly, I didn't even do anything to deserve getting thrown into the dungeon here. So like the head baker saw that Joseph's interpretation was legit. And he was like, yo, Joseph, I had this dream too, man. And get this, bro. I saw 3 totally rad white baskets on my head. And by white, I mean full of holes, So like the top basket had all kinds of yummy food for Pharaoh. You won't believe it, but the birds actually ate it right off my head. It was like their feast, And Joseph was like, yo, I got you with the 411 on this dream interpretation. So check it out. Those 3 baskets represent 3 days, my dude. In like 3 days, Pharaoh is going to be like, you're out, man. And like hang you on a tree for everyone to see. And then the birds are going to come and feast on your flesh. Just saying. So like on the 3rd day, it was Pharaoh's birthday. And he decided to throw this massive party for his servants. During the party, he singled out the head butler and head baker from his crew. And he totally hooked up the main butler like he got his butlership back and even let him hold Pharaoh's cup. No cap. But Joseph was straight up right about his interpretation. And this resulted in the chief baker getting executed by hanging. But like the head butler totally forgot about Joseph and like didn't remember him at all. Genesis chapter 41. So after 2 whole years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. And guess what? He was standing by the river. So like these super good looking and chubby cows came out of the river and started grazing in the meadow. So like there were 7 more cows that came out of the river. But these ones looked sick and skinny. And they like stood next to the other cows by the edge of the river. And the not so pretty and skinny cows totally devoured the 7 good looking and chubby cows. So Pharaoh woke up from his dream. So he dozed off again and had another dream. And check it. 7 ears of corn popped up on one stalk, looking plump and dope. Rank Hebrew for fat. Check it out. 7 weak ears dried up from the east wind, grew right after them. So like the 7 scrawny ears totally chowed down on the 7 plump and good looking ears. Then Pharaoh woke up and whoa, he realized it was all just a dream. So the next morning he was feeling really anxious and decided to gather all the magicians and wise people of Egypt. Pharaoh told them about this dream, but sadly, none of them could figure out what it meant for Pharaoh. So the head butler talked to Pharaoh and was like, I just realized I messed up. My bad. Pharaoh got seriously mad at his dudes and locked me up in the captain of the guard's crib, me and the top baker dude. So dude, we were just chilling one night and both of us had these crazy dreams. And guess this, each dream had its own unique meaning. So there was this dope young dude with us, a Hebrew homie who worked as a servant for the captain of the guard. We spilled our dreams to him and he straight up decoded them for each of us. based on what we dreamt about. So like what happened was the guy totally explained exactly what it meant. And it turned out to be true, dude. He brought me back to my important job. And, unfortunately, he ended up giving the other guy the boot. So Pharaoh hit up Joseph and they pulled him out of jail real quick. He freshened up, got a fresh cut, switched up his outfit, and went to meet Pharaoh. So Pharaoh was like, yo, Joseph, I had this crazy dream, but nobody can make sense of it. But I heard you have mad skills in interpreting dreams. Like you got that gift, So if you hear a dream, you can totally break it down. Joseph replied to Pharaoh like, it's not really up to me, God's got this. And he'll totally give you a chill and peaceful answer, man. So Pharaoh was like, yo, Joseph, check it. I had this dream where I was chilling by the riverbank. Yo, check it out. There were 7 cows that came out of the river, and dang, they were thick and looking fly. They went to eat in a lush field. And like, whoa, 7 more cows showed up, man. And they were like totally skinny and ugly and sickly looking. Like I never seen anything so messed up in Egypt, dude. So like the skinny and ugly cows totally chowed down on the first 7 plump cows. And after they devoured, it was like impossible to tell that they'd actually eaten them. But they still looked totally uncool, just like before. Then I woke up, man. So in my dream, I saw something pretty crazy. Like imagine this. There was this stalk, right? And hanging from it, these 7 ears that were like perfect and totally awesome. Yo, peep this. 7 ears popped out, but they were all withered, thin, and straight up wrecked by the east wind. Like they were smaller and shriveled, Then the skinny ears ate the 7 good ears. And I explained this to the magicians, but nobody could tell me what it meant. So Joseph told Pharaoh, both of Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God revealed to Pharaoh what's going to happen soon. So like the 7 healthy cows represent 7 years. And the 7 good ears of corn also represent 7 years. It's like the dream is all about the same thing, So like these 7 skinny and unattractive cows that appeared after the other ones, that represents 7 years, And those 7 dried up ears of corn messed up by the east wind, they're like a sign of 7 years of major famine. So this is what I've told Pharaoh. God is going to make it crystal clear to him about what he's going to do. Yo, check it out. So like for the next 7 years, Egypt's going to be totally lit with plenty of everything all over the place, And then like after that, there's going to be 7 years of straight up famine, fam. Like everyone's going to forget about all the abundance and goodness in Egypt because this famine is going to straight up devour the whole land. And there won't be any abundance in the land because of that intense famine. It's going to be truly tough, like super heavy series. And the reason the dream came to Pharaoh twice is because God is totally behind it. He's going to make it happen real soon. God's got it all planned out. So like Pharaoh needs to find someone who's really smart and clever and put them in charge of Egypt, Pharaoh should totally get on this move and like hire some managers to take charge of the land. And during the 7 years of plenty, he should like claim 1/5 of Egypt's land for real. You'll make sure to stock up on all the grub during the years when everything is going great. Store up that corn for Pharaoh and stash away food in the cities. And that food will be saved for the land during the 7 years of famine that will happen in Egypt, so that the land doesn't get messed up by the famine. Mess up in Hebrew means not to get cut off. Pharaoh and all his homies were totally vibing with it. And Pharaoh was like, guys, you got to admit, this dude is something special. I mean, where else can we find someone with such incredible skills, like a true connection to the divine? Pharaoh was like, yo, Joseph, God has totally given you all this insight. And you are straight up the most clever and wise person we got around here. You're going to be the boss of my crib. And all my peeps will do as you say, no doubt. Only when it comes to the throne, I have a higher rank than you. Be ruled, which means to have authority or show respect. So Pharaoh was like, yo, Joseph, check it. I made you the big boss of all Egypt. So Pharaoh like removed his own ring from his hand and totally placed it on Joseph's hand and dressed him up in really sleek and stylish clothes made of fine linen. He even put a cool gold chain around Joseph's neck. It was like super fancy, Fine linen can also mean silk, just FYI. Then he let him ride in the swaggy second chariot he had. And everyone was like, yo, show respect and bow down. He made him the ultimate boss of all Egypt. Respect, Father, was his new name, you feel? Pharaoh was like, hey, Joseph, just so you know, I'm Pharaoh, and nobody in Egypt can do anything without you. Like no one can even lift a finger or take a step without your say-so. Pharaoh was like, yo, Joseph, your new name is Zaphan Thith Pinah. And he hooked him up with Asenath, who was the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. Then Joseph became the real deal and had authority over all Egypt. Fun fact, Japhanathapiah means a revealer of secrets, or the man whom secrets are revealed in Coptic. So Joseph was like 30 years old when he straight up stood in front of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And then Joseph left Pharaoh's presence and went all over Egypt, checking things out. During the 7 years of plenty, the earth was totally slaying the game with abundance of crops. And he collected all the grub, like the total eats of the 7 years that were in Egypt, and stashed it in the cities. He made sure to store all the crops from the fields surrounding each city in the same way. Joseph snagged an insane amount of corn, like more than you could ever even fathom, until he straight up lost count. Like seriously, it was endless. Before the famine went down, Joseph had 2 sons. Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, who was the priest in the city of On, gave birth to them. And Joseph gave his firstborn son the name Manasseh, because he believed that God had helped him move past all the struggles and troubles he faced, as well as the burden of his family's past. Manasseh means forgotten. And the second one he named Ephraim. Why? Because God blessed me with prosperity, even during the hard times in this place that has brought me suffering. Ephraim means fruitful, if you were wondering. And the amazing abundance that happened in Egypt for 7 years finally came to an end. And yeah, the 7 years like shortage began to happen, just like Joseph predicted. And this shortage was happening everywhere, like all over the world. But in Egypt specifically, they had bread and were not affected. So like when Egypt was totally out of food, everyone was freaking out and begging Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh was like, yo, just go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you to do, all right? So like there was a totally really big famine going on everywhere, even in Egypt. And guess what? Joseph was like, yo, let's open up all the storehouses and start selling food to the Egyptians. But dang, the famine got even worse in Egypt. So like all these countries were totally coming to Egypt, to get some of that grain from Joseph. The famine was hitting hard, man, like every single land was experiencing it. Put in the comment section, this is the word of the Lord. Follow, like, and subscribe. Hit that arrow at the bottom of the screen and share this video. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for the turnaround we see in the life of Joseph. We thank you that you turn things around. Every time we turn around, you bless us. And you did this for Joseph. Some may argue that perhaps he got into this situation because of his own immaturity and the fact that he was bragging to his siblings and bragging to his father and mother. But the fact is, he was only 17 years old. He was still a lad. And so regardless of how this may have happened or occurred, we thank you that you turn situations around. And even in the story of Judah, the hypocrisy that was listed, the hypocrisy that was exhibited by the life he lived and by the actions that he made. You said to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, you said, thou hypocrite. So God, we pray right now today that we as the people of God would fulfill your will with sincerity, integrity, and ethics. We bless you now, and we give you glory for this opportunity to read your word. Bless us as we go through this day. Let us meditate on the turnaround and meditate on the fact that we're to be genuine. And we ask it all in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Thank God. Amen. Everybody say thank God. Amen. And put in the comment section, this is the word of the Lord.